Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and good morning. Welcome to CCG headquarters. I'm Shirley Ren, Director of CCG Publishing Center. Today is our great honor to host this CCG Global Dialogue event. Now, please let me to invite Dr. Mabel Lu Miao, Secretary General of CCG, to deliver the welcoming remarks. Please, Dr. Miao.
Thank you very much. And distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear Professor William Kirby, good afternoon and good morning. Welcome to CCG Global Dialogues, the modern university and China-US education exchange. Since its launch in 2021, CCG has initiated the CCG Global Dialogue Series project, in which CCG President Huiyao Wang has engaged in rational, objective, and in-depth conversation with dozens of international thought leaders. The viewpoints shared by these dialogue guests are invaluable for comprehending the evolving trends in global development. The distinguished dialogue guests are including Grandma Allison, Joseph Nye, Kishore Mahbubani, Angus Deaton, John Thornton, Pascal Lamy, among others. It is believed that by understanding the insights of those dialogue guests, comparing and constructing those perspectives, a deeper understanding of critical topics such as globalization, global governance, US and China relation, and multilateralism, and the world economy and transnational threats faced by humanity, of course, including today's topic, higher education. As we know, the modern university has born in Germany in 19th century. In 20th century, the US became the global leader in higher education. What is the landscape for the higher education in 21st century? And what is China's role in this landscape? To answer this question, we will dig deep into empires of ideas, creating the modern university from Germany to American to China to explore the rise and fall of major universities and what it takes to become a world-class educational institution. We will also identify the challenges and threats we currently face and how we can strengthen global exchange, especially between US and China, in the field of higher education. Today, we are honored to have the author, Empires of Ideas, Professor William Kirby, at CCG headquarters. Welcome, Professor Kirby. Professor Kirby is former Dean of Harvard Faculty of Arts and Sciences, former Director of Fairbanks Center for Chinese Studies. He is a Harvard University Distinguished Service Professor and currently serves as T.M. Chang Professor of China Studies at Harvard University and Spangler Family Professor of Business Administration at Harvard B School. He is also Chairman of the Harvard China Fund, the university's academic venture fund for China, and the faculty chair of the Harvard Center Shanghai, Harvard's first university-wide center located outside the United States. Professor Kirby is a historian of modern China, and his work examines contemporary China's business, economic, and political development in an international context. He writes and teaches on the growth of modern companies in China, Chinese corporate law and company structure, business relation across Greater China, and China's relation with the United States and Europe. Today, we are so honored to have Professor Kirby to deliver his remarks and have the dialogue with Dr. Wang Huiyao. So right now, floor is yours, Professor Kirby. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mabel, and thank you very much, Henry, for inviting me to this wonderful space. to continue a conversation that you and I started at Harvard about how universities rise and fall, how systems rise and fall. The central question of that book, Empires of Ideas, is if Germany defined the modern university, which it absolutely did in the 19th century, an altogether new definition of what a university is. And if the United States had a very good 20th century, particularly the second half of the 20th century, what are the prospects that China will be the leading system of higher education or set standards for the world in the 21st century? Because no system of higher education has risen more both in quality as well as quantity than the system in China over the last 20 to 25 years. And as I think of this question, I think that it is not simply a matter of one winning and one losing. At the moment today, if you read the newspapers, you see many people in the United States worried about the end of American supremacy, and some people in China might call it American hegemony. But in fact, the world of universities is not one in which there has to be one dominant player. In fact, the history of the modern university is how we have all learned one from another. As you all know, universities are very old, or at least institutions that are called universities are very old, going back more than 1,000 years. But the modern university is only 214 years old this year, with the founding of the University of Berlin, in the aftermath of Napoleon's defeat of Prussia, a determination on the part of Prussia to build up intellectual strength in what they had lost in physical strength. And that university defined what a university is, that it should be, as the great universities in China are today, devoted to not simply the transmission of knowledge, but the creation of knowledge, with faculty and students working together in seminars and in laboratories to create knowledge. That the students should have Lernfreiheit, the freedom to learn in different disciplines, and the faculty should have Lehrfreiheit, the freedom to teach, something that we sometimes too simply summarize as academic freedom or academic autonomy. Third, that the institution should have institutional autonomy to make its decisions for itself, what to research, what not to research, whom to hire, whom not to hire, even if, like the University of Berlin, the first such university, it's entirely funded by the state. And fourth, at the center of it, and this is something that is dear to my heart as the former dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences at Harvard, the center of any great university, a university may have wonderful professional schools, but the center of it is what they called in Germany the philosophical faculty. What we call at Harvard the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, the place where undergraduates learn not only skills, but also how to think, how to ask questions, how to become critical thinkers with the understanding that their first job is not going to be their last. How do you educate people rather than simply train people? And all of that is there in principle in 1810. And what I can tell you today is that no university anywhere has perfectly achieved all of these goals. There are constraints on what is called academic freedom in almost every society at one point or another. As you may have read in the newspapers, there were enormous disputes in the United States during the past year of what are people allowed to say or what are people not allowed to say in public discourse or in classrooms at American universities. So the great University of Berlin, which became the best university in the world for 100 years, and created the idea that there was such a thing as a university free to do research, teaching, learning unencumbered by the government. That university's motto, that university's reputation was such that when Stanford University was founded, Stanford University chose a motto in German, Die Luft der Freiheit weht, the wind of freedom blows. But even after 100 years, the great sociologist Max Weber, when asked about academic freedom at the University of Berlin, said, yes, we have academic freedom within the bounds of political and ecclesiastical, that is church, orthodoxy. Outside of that, no, we don't. And so there are great limits even in this greatest moment of the rise of the modern research university of what one can and cannot do. And then, of course, the capacity of the university to simply function at all is destroyed by the Nazis and by the Second World War. Today, if you look at the rise and fall of systems and of universities, if we had the kind of rankings that we have today of global universities, as late as 1913, or maybe even into the 1920s, probably 8 of the top 10 universities in the world would have been German. The other 2 would have been British, Oxford and Cambridge. No American university comes close to these. Today, and I say this with apologies to my German friends, it's very rare when even one German university gets into the top 50 in the world. Times change. And the great University of Berlin, now called the Humboldt University, is one in which it's no longer the best in the world, it's no longer the best in Germany, it's not even the best in Berlin. Nothing lasts forever. This is something that I tried to remind my colleagues at Harvard. We think we're doing very well now. But look, unless you reinvent yourself and unless you continue to think of how you will improve, you will go backward. And one of the ways in which American universities in the second half of the 20th century and Chinese universities today have improved remarkably is being open to talent and to ideas from around the world. The history of Chinese-American academic cooperation is one in which both sides have benefited the other extraordinarily. If you think we're here in Beijing, and we're not very far removed from the campus of Tsinghua University, which was founded as a preparatory school to send young Chinese to the United States. And its first campus is a beautiful campus modeled on an American Midwestern campus, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. It becomes the greatest research university in China by the 1930s, when its president, who is an American-educated scientist named Meiqi, still known today as Tsinghua Daxue的永远的校长. He had come as a Boxer indemnity student to the United States, to Worcester Polytech, not far from us in Boston. And he, in this period of the 1930s, and then during the war, he defends the values of academic integrity, of learning, of questioning, even in a period of the greatest danger for the Chinese nation in that period. And that's why he is venerated today by Tsinghua alumni, both here in Beijing and by the Guoli Tsinghua Daxue that exists in Hsinchu in Taiwan today, which he founded after 1949. Tsinghua, of course, became great also by learning from others and working with others, with the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe after the from the 1950s and on. And today, this great university, founded as a prep school to send young Chinese to the United States, still does that happily. We still have wonderful graduate students coming from Tsinghua. But today, Tsinghua University also is bringing the best and the brightest from around the world to China. And to be here in Beijing, as Henry knows, I was a chief advisor, one of the chief advisors to Stephen Schwarzman and the remarkable president of Tsinghua University, President Chen Jining, for the establishment of Sushimen Shuyuan, Schwarzman College, a place that has been remarkably successful over the last decade in bringing talent to China from all corners of the world. And it is aspirationally going to be, it wants to be, the Rhodes Scholarship of the 21st century. And when you think of this, you just have to think of the incredible ambition of this university, a place born to send young Chinese away, bringing the best. Now, you know, young people in this audience today, you should not want to go to take a Rhodes Scholarship. You should not want to go to Oxford. I love Oxford, but you shouldn't want to go there. You should go, or your children should go and study at Schwarzman College, which is, you know, why would you want to go to a cold, rainy, foggy, self-isolating island off the coast of Europe when you can be part of the rise of all global education here in China? Anyway, I'm a bit of a propagandist about that program, so I apologize. But when I think of the ways in which flows of talents have worked between China and the United States, I'm thinking also of my own education. My teacher was a great professor named John Fairbank, Fei Zhengqing Jiaoshou. And I was his last student. I think when he met me, he said, "Oh, I have to retire. Time to go." And I was very fortunate to have be taught by Professor Fairbank in his final years on the faculty. But he studied his Chinese history and learned his Chinese history here in Beijing, at Tsinghua University, educated by a great historian, Professor Zhang Tingfu, who himself had been a Boxer Indemnity scholar who had gone to Oberlin and then Columbia and came back to lead the history department at Tsinghua University, which was the leading history department in China and one of the leading ones, arguably, in the world in the 1930s. And they were friends for the rest of their lives. Today, American universities, if they remain strong, are strong to the degree that they are open to talent from around the world. We have benefited enormously in the early 20th century through the Boxer Indemnity Program, in other periods of Chinese migration to the United States, by the talent that has come to our universities for people who study there. Some will stay in the US, many will return to China. Today, happily, we still have some 300,000 Chinese students in American universities. And quite frankly, any research university that is not open to international talent, and particularly, in my view, to the great talent that comes out of China's universities, so people coming to do doctoral degrees, any university that is not open to talent from around the world is not going to be competitive. It's just the way it is. You have to be open to the absolute best in graduate education. Undergraduate education tends to be more serving the students in your own country, but graduate education, if it is to be world leading, has to be open to talent from around the world. And any political pressures to decouple, to bifurcate, to keep people out, either from the United States or from China, is to our mutual detriment. And it is something that I am personally committed to fighting against, both in the United States and beyond. The reason that I'm here in Beijing this week and was recently in Hong Kong and in Taiwan is to promote the idea that my university, Harvard, is not retreating from its engagement with China, but wants to deepen its engagement with China. And I know that in talking to the university presidents here in mainland China and in Hong Kong and in Taiwan, this is a mutually shared goal. It is something in which sometimes we have to fight against political winds in order to persevere. But think of one important lesson in this book, and one important lesson in the history of universities, is that you have to play the long game. You have to work not for the next 5 years, but for the next 50 or the next 100 years. Universities outlast governments. You know, Harvard University was founded in Mingchao, Moanian. Nobody at Harvard knew that, of course. But we've outlasted in the United States, of course, the early colony of Massachusetts, the British colonial rule, the American Revolution, and so on, and multiple different American administrations. The great Chinese universities, most of them founded in the 1890s or early 1900s, have gone through seen enormous political upheaval, revolutions, repressions, times of great investment, such as the present. But they have endured, and their history of enduring and commitment to their mission is, I think, something that should be a model for all of us. So let me just stop here and thank you all very much for your attention and look forward to a conversation with you, Henry.
Thank you very much for your stimulating and inspiring speech from Professor William Kirby. Just now you reviewed the history of the university worldwide and examine the contemporary university, modern university's identity. Also, you reviewed the role university can play for human being. Of course, the relationship between the university and the politics and others is quite impressive for me. We would like to explore more about this modern university, especially the relationship between US and China, especially on the people-to-people exchanges among the higher education. Next, we would like to invite you to conduct the dialogue with Dr. Henry Huiyao Wang, President of the Center for China and Globalization. Floor is yours, and this is the CCG Global Dialogue Series, part of this. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Miao. And so great, Bill, it's really nice to see you again here in Beijing at CCG head office. Actually, as you just mentioned, actually we had last dialogue, which is at Widener Library at Harvard, was really memorable. You give a very comprehensive discussion about ideas of the nations. You know, this book that you have of the best universities and empires of the ideas, which is you know, that we actually you know, always. As you said, outlasting the government and for many centuries. So I'm glad you come to China again, and so we would like to continue our dialogue. We left about 2 years ago, and so that we can also take this into a series of a dialogue we have conducted over the past 4 years for almost 100 global opinion leaders of different thought and different schools. So really welcome you again. So Bill, you mentioned about this importance of you know, education in nation building, and of course in bridge building and in communication and also the knowledge transition. So what I think now in current time, we are getting more geopolitical tensions. We are getting more probably misunderstandings on both sides and across the world. We have more challenges actually facing us. So it's so important now. We need to more exchanges. So you mentioned there's a number of great history stories, like we talk about Tsinghua University, how it was originated, Box indemnity scholars, and of course we have you are an advisor to the Schwarzman College. And you and I are also on the board of Duke Queensland University in China. And of course, we have Johns Hopkins Nanjing and NYU Shanghai. So there's a number of US-China education exchanges. So in the current situation, how do you think that we can strengthen these US-China the education exchanges? You are being the champion, you know, the pioneer, probably one of the most advanced scholars in terms of bridging the education gaps between the two countries. You must have a lot of thought as well on top of this book. So probably, given how important that today we education exchanges, student exchanges, and people-to-people exchanges, and you also mentioned about talent, right? How we can really facilitate talent flows. Those are the still still in people's mind in these days, particularly in China. How we continue to sustain that. Perhaps you could give a bit of your further thought on that.
It's a great and difficult question because, one of the things that Professor Fairbank once told me was that his biggest disappointment in his work on China was the cutting off of academic relations with China from the early 1950s, really till the late 1970s, and no contact with his friends and mentors and teachers back in China, and no contact the other way around, mutually self-isolating. And this turned out to be actually quite bad for both countries. And when we have engaged cooperatively in the building of institutions, one can think of some of these newer ones like Kunshan Dashi or NYU Shanghai, great institutions, or Schwarzman College. They're building on a tradition that dates back, say, to Yenjing University, the current campus of Peking University, or Jinling University. This building at Nanjing Dashi, the Nanjing Dashi de Beidalo, was built for Jinling University, a Chinese-American joint venture. And the architect was actually an American who is an ancestor of one of my colleagues on the Harvard faculty, Professor Dwight Perkins. So this is, we share so much in common. And as you know, at Harvard, on our campus, one of the most prominent educational memorials on Harvard's campus is the stele given by Dr. Hu Shi of Peking University in 1936, where he was given an honorary degree on Harvard's 300th anniversary. And Hu Shi wrote on that about how central education was to the culture of a nation and to the strength of a nation. He once said, he didn't say this in what's written in that stele, but he once said, for a university, for a nation, not to have an army or a navy is no shame. But for a nation not to have a university or a library, this is a cause for shame. Now, I don't think a lot of people in that period of time agreed with him, but it is the shared, universities, of course, have their differences in different countries. There are different cultures of teaching. There are different expectations, different job markets, often. At the same time, the modern research university, whether in Europe or North America or in China, is much more similar than it is different. And this is why the leaders of Chinese universities and American universities and British and Australian universities could agree in the year 2013 on what the fundamental principles of a modern research university are. And the values of the leaders of China's leading universities and those of American leading universities are actually much more similar than they are different. The challenge that they both face today, and I can speak, you will know the Chinese situation better than I, but in the United States you have political pressures on people to do less regarding China. At Harvard, happily not that case. But you do see it in some instances, the various states forcing the closure of the Confucius Institutes, which I think is a shame, personally, or the Trump administration canceling our Fulbright program with China, an extraordinary program that has benefited both sides for decades now. And so I think, but the good news is that many universities are also pushing back against this. Our Chinese enrollments at Harvard continue to be strong. This last summer, we opened a new summer school, Harvard Summer School in Shanghai, together with Fudan University. Extraordinarily successful. A small program to start, but I hope the seeds of something much larger. We opened a new language program in Taipei. We opened we assisted more than, I don't have the exact number, but somewhere between 200 and 300 Harvard undergraduates came to China last summer. Some of them as part of a student organization to teach in Chinese high schools. About 150 of them did that. We also had 130 Harvard Business School students come and visit China. I have started a series of grants through our China Fund, our Harvard China Fund, called Re-engaging China Grants to our faculty so that they can re-engage with their academic partners here in China. Most of our cooperation, and I think it's important to note this, I have many close friends in Chinese universities, including many close friends here at Nanjing University, where this picture is of. But the majority of American professors who have research work in China together with Chinese colleagues are scientists, engineers, people in public health, medicine, in all other areas of endeavor, because they share the same passions and they are addressing many of the same problems. And we have to encourage them to work together. When in 2019, Harvard President Bacco met with President Xi Jinping, they both agreed that universities need to cooperate even when governments have difficulty doing so. And President Xi was very clear about his view that this was a positive thing, as was President Bacco. And I know our current president, Alan Garber, strongly feels the same way. But if we think about it, it isn't just geopolitics that we are facing now. The COVID years really set so much back. The zero COVID policy made it impossible for foreign students to study here, or foreign scholars to do that. And the end of that, of course, is very welcome. But then you have to recover from 3 years of absence to build programs back up. I believe we will, but I think it will take time and determination to do so. And it will take, again, a long view, because Chinese-American political relations may not get better tomorrow. But universities will need and want to cooperate.
Great, thank you, Bill, for your outlining all those importance. I know that you are the chair of the Harvard China Fund. I mean, you have. It's great news to hear that you have sponsored, 200 or 300 Harvard students come to China in the summer, and that trend will continue. And I know that China is also earnestly wants to welcome more American students, because right now, I mean, even though the numbers drop a little bit, from the peak of 370,000 to currently 290,000, but still, Chinese student is still the largest source of international students studying in the U.S. So we hope that is continue as well. And I know U.S. Ambassador Nick Burns, also former Harvard faculty member, he's actually very keen to promote more academic exchanges. And I also hope that, as you said, there's a 3 years pandemic that's significantly reduced the American student coming to China, but also there could be some tensions or mistrust that among American parents, that maybe they felt not suitable time to come. But we are actually, as a CCG, we also promote a lot of mutual understanding. And for example, we just not too long ago we issued a report on how to, in 5 years' time, welcome 50,000 American youngsters come to China. We could, down through the alumni networks, scholar exchanges, and all those associations and many things, linkage of universities. So on the U.S. student, I mean, coming to China now is still a number probably. I think it's probably has gone up quite a lot now, maybe over 1,000 or even 2,000, but we hope to have more. So what's your ideas and suggestion that we can have more American students to come? Of course, lifting travel ban could be one of them, but also China could do more to help. One of the suggestions I would like to make is let's get China has issued the 18 countries of European country free visas. Let's give all the U.S. citizens free visas to come, so their parents can come to see it's safe, it's sound, and then their kids can follow probably, or faculty member can easily come.
That would be an incredibly welcome, knowing sometimes, I mean, actually, we work with the Chinese consulate in New York, which has been incredibly supportive of our students and faculty getting visas relatively quickly, and actually more quickly often than our Chinese counterparts can get here, although under the Biden administration and our embassy here in Beijing, they have also worked overtime to make sure that students who want to come to the United States are able to come. So on both sides, we have to work against not just the political headwinds from people who are, worried. Sometimes people in the United States are worried about things that nefarious Chinese plans to do X or Y, and so there are people who are convinced that TikTok is a mortal danger to the American Republic. I think that's quite frankly laughable, but these people actually believe it, and it is a sign of not happy times when the two leading powers in the world are having a dispute over a teenage video app. It's a little crazy when you think about it. So it leads people to be much more cautious. And the great programs that, China studies in the United States, for example, by people like Professor Fairbank, were developed because these were, Fairbank in particular was a remarkable academic entrepreneur. His mission in life was he couldn't re-engage China directly during the Cold War, but he did educate and place in American universities several generations of scholars who would teach young people about China. And we are still benefiting from that today. So one has to worry. I think our faculty are more than willing to re-engage. Sometimes, and happily not at Harvard, but at some universities I do know, administrators are more cautious. And there's a wonderful Chinese phrase which you will understand true of administrators here in China. It's pa ma fan. Yes. Oh no, we're gonna, let's not do that. That might get us in trouble. You never know what might get you in trouble. And that's true, both in China and the United States. But if you don't try, you absolutely won't succeed. And if you don't try, then both countries will become more parochial, more self-isolating. You have people here worried about, you're going to China. People in the United States, rather, you're going to China. Aren't you worried? And so on. And I make it very clear why I am not worried and why our students are not worried. You get that on occasion. And you have also in China sometimes fears that I've seen expressed by some of that there's too much exposure to so-called Western ideas. Now, I don't actually know what a Western idea is. Is the university a Western idea? Marxism is a Western idea. It's a pretty powerful Western idea.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you have, vividly had a good example. First of all, you found has spawned so many Harvard students come, but I can remember a number of Harvard professors who came. I mean, you are one of the most active. I mean, I had a Graham Allison here. We had Joseph Nye was here. Tony Satch and many more. There's a lot of Harvard professors actually set good examples for this communications, which is really important.
I would say that at our university, there are more than 300 faculty who regularly before COVID did research with Chinese colleagues in different parts of the university. And we often never knew when they were in China.
That's true.
Because there was no reason to tell me or to tell the university. They're faculty, they can do what they want. But I always kind of wished we had put a little GPS chip in their neck, so that we would be able to just identify where our exchanges were. I'm kidding, of course, but where our exchanges were successful, and how could we help deepen those exchanges for the long run.
Absolutely. So we love to promote your books, and as a matter of fact, we have also done a book for Graham Allison and Joseph Nye, which I'll give you later. But that's exactly the things that I think the leading professors, which set a good examples for these kind of exchanges. But more than that, we've been also visiting you in Harvard this summer. We had a meeting together, but also we were in Washington together with this Duke University forum on the 21st century global university innovation. So on that global university innovation, you've been the dean of Harvard, undergrad, arts and faculties, and so for the global university governance, maybe how to be a best university. I mean, the empire of ideas, you have already given some, but we'd like to hear a bit more. What is the best university that we should have? I mean, of course, you mentioned one of them, attracting talents from all over the world, right? And then furthermore, but maybe after that, we'll also raise some question interest to the parents about how to become a good student that really can get into the good university. But first, how to be a good university, and then second, how to be a good student or good applicant. Yeah.
There's no one way to be a good or great university, and there are many ways to fail in doing this. But one of the things that we learned in this Duke conference in Washington was that this is a world of extraordinary experimentation and innovation in higher education, and not just in the research university. In undergraduate colleges the world over. So as you know, Dr. Noah Pickus at Duke is a co-author of a book on new universities. I co-edited a volume of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences journal, Daedalus, on innovation and experimentation in higher education. Because all over the world, in Asia, sometimes in China, in India, Southeast Asia, Europe, and to some degree North America, but not as much in North America as elsewhere. All kinds of new educational models, some of them more virtual, like the Minerva project in California, but some of them truly, how should we say, heroic in their intent, like the Asian University for Women in Chittagong in Bangladesh, one of the most ambitious programs to educate Muslim women from all over South Asia in the arts and sciences in a rigorous way, in a not easy city to educate people, Chittagong, in Bangladesh. If the United States and China continue on the direction of disengaging from each other and of actually becoming more self-isolating, then we both lose out. We all, Chinese and American universities, need to study what else is going on in the world. I can tell you that American universities became great in part by learning and taking lessons from others, from the British on undergraduate education, from the Germans on graduate and research-focused education. And so, but today, it is very rare for an American university to look abroad for any new ideas. We're very parochial in this regard. Chinese universities still do this, but they too have become, as they have gotten better and as they become more prestigious, they have often tended in innovation to look more to what each of them is doing than what is happening, for example, in Japan or in Southeast Asia or elsewhere. And I think both of us need to have what the great president of Peking University, Tsai Yuen-pei, once called a 世界观的教育, and be focused on an education with a world view and maintain a truly global view of higher education.
Absolutely, the global view and world view, that's really a very, very important qualification. So my second question was on on the student. I mean, we have a lot of Chinese students wants to study continuously in the U.S. and other countries, other advanced learning. And so these days, you know, if you recruiting student, what are the good quality you're looking at, or is this there's any recommendation you can give to how to be a best student with the there's no fast rule probably, huh?
So if anyone listening to this is thinking of, you know, parent or student thinking of applying to Harvard College as an undergraduate, you know, there is no one path. We don't have an absolute profile of the talent that we wish. We want to have a highly diverse student body, diverse in talents as well as in backgrounds, international as well as domestic. So there's no absolute. We don't have a Gaokao, as you know. We do have these other tests, but they're not as definitive as Gaokao. We're really looking at the individual and their own capacities, and we try to interview as many as possible personally by alumni here in China. That became more difficult over COVID, but you know, I'm always asked, you know, how do you get into Harvard? And I have a one-word answer: apply. Because if you don't apply, you absolutely can't get in. That I can guarantee you. And what's different about graduate education compared to undergraduate, we have one committee that admits everyone to Harvard College. Very large committee, works very, very hard. But in graduate education, it's not one committee for the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. Every department chooses their new PhD students. And they have no criteria except excellence. They are not saying we need this many Americans or this many Chinese. They go for the best in the world. And this is what has made Harvard and some of the other graduate schools in the United States among the best in the world, because they look for talent wherever it comes from. And they all get the same amount of funding, which is total funding from us, and true of our competitors in the U.S., irrespective of their background, irrespective of their income. And that, I think, anything that endangers that really does endanger the capacity of American universities to continue to do well. But there's no one way. You know, if you're going to apply to the math department, you have a different set of skills than if you're applying to the history department or others. But I hope that the number of Chinese applications to American graduate students rebounds to its earlier level, because even though, of course, you could now get an extraordinary graduate education here in China in a way that you could not 40 years ago or even 30 years ago. And even though that can be a launch pad to a good academic career, it's important for the best people to test themselves against the best in the world, to continue to go abroad, to learn what others are doing, and to make friendships that will last a lifetime. And will be very important either in your life as an academic or in your life in business or whatever else you go on to do. You know, I would not be sitting here talking to you if I had not, as an undergraduate, studied abroad in Germany, and then after college studied in Germany. I just wouldn't. I would never have had the courage to then go on and learn Chinese and come here.
Great, you're really multilingual, and I have a final question before I open up for one or two questions. And I want to come back to this book. You are having this book, you know, that empire of the and the ideas, you know, which is great. And then we know that you have overseas edition of this book already published.
Published in Taiwan. And
notice
that the Taiwan edition. Excellent translation from Lianjing Chubanshi. They decided not to have Nanda, not to have Nanjing Daxue on the cover. They have Harvard Business School on the cover, which is a much better, at least in Taiwan, marketing strategy.
But anyway, we're going to have a mainland version. I think the Chinese main version will probably
I'm very much looking forward to
coming
that,
up
Henry.
also soon
Very
on that.
grateful.
To summarize our dialogue, what do you have for the Chinese readers, on this top university, I mean, read from the Chinese simplified version, complicated version overseas edition. It's called 顶尖大学的条件, the top universities conditions. So maybe just to give us,
Okay.
one or two conditions, because I'm a great fan of the university history. One of my ancestors was the dean of Yueluo Su Yuan in Hunan.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect.
So that was a long time ago. So it's great, and he's actually doing his tenure there. Zheng Guofan, Zhou Zhongtang was actually among his graduates many years ago. So we would like to see how we can carry on the great tradition of top universities in China.
Here I will take a page out of one of my predecessors' book, Professor Henry Rosowski, who was Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences before me. And he had several lessons about how universities become and remain great. And he wrote a book called The University, An Owner's Manual, really remarkable book. And he said that one of the most important things for a great university in terms of its success or failure is governance. How is it governed? Who is, in the case of many American universities, this means boards of trustees or boards of regents of public universities. In Harvard's case, it means the Harvard Corporation. And when there is good governance at a university, governance that allows the institution to do its job, to do research unimpeded, to allow teaching without constraint, to allow students to learn across the curriculum. When you have that, and that is protected by good governance and reinforced by good governance, you are very likely to have a successful university. But we have seen this breakdown just in the American context in the 1950s, during the McCarthyite period, where the anti-communist scare in an American university led to the purging of faculty and led to the interrogation of students who had been active politically. And this happened at Harvard just as it happened at many other American universities. And in the same moment, the same thing happened in a actually more greater degree in Chinese universities in that period, to our mutual detriment once again. And so there is no one model for good governance. You kind of know when you don't have to think about it, then you probably do have good governance. But as in the 1960s, when Harvard and many other American universities almost came apart out of conflicts over the Vietnam War, there was great disputation about how best to govern a university to keep it focused on its academic mission. And in the last year in the United States, with so much contestation over the Israeli-Gaza operation, you see different boards of trustees and our own Harvard Corporation going one way one week and going another way the next week, and not leading to confidence, quite frankly. And so universities are complicated things to govern. In the United States, it's very difficult to be a university president because you have so many constituents, so many jobs to do, and the average tenure of an American university president these days is shorter than that of an undergraduate in college. Undergraduates take longer than you think, Henry, but it's only about 5-point-something years. Now, turn it over to China. It's difficult to be president of any great university in China, too. And even more difficult when you also have another co-president, the party secretary. And often they work together extremely well to the betterment of the university, but sometimes not. Very difficult lines of communication and structures. This is a Soviet model that has been maintained in China. And China has extraordinary university presidents and many extraordinary party secretaries, but it's just automatically a more complicated model than what we have in the United States or what exists in Western Europe. So the challenge of good governance is even greater. And when it works as it is working, for example, at Tsinghua or Beida in recent days, then it's a marvelous thing.
Yeah. It's trying to work. I think probably the Western universities, particularly U.S., you have a board of governance very strong, and where in China you have because it's government funded all the universities, so they have a government representative does all the also supervision and advise as well. So that's
the basic job of government, in my view, is to support and protect the university from external pressures, and to allow students to learn, faculty to teach, research to be pursued, and not to be too in the weeds. And we see many examples in China of this in recent years about what students should teach, what should learn, what faculty should teach. But you see this in the United States too, in the state of Florida, where the governor has allowed for the banning of certain books in Florida, or certain disciplines such as sociology are removed from general education curriculum. It's not far removed from the worst forms of government interference.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Provide funding is important for government to really support the university flourishing, and of course, trying to in certain environment to organize things together is also play important role. Now maybe we'll have one question. Okay, I have Frances. She's a alumni of Harvard, and so where's the microphone?
Thank you, Professor Kirby. Every time I listen, I learn. So I have a question. Now there are a variety of lists called 大学排行榜, try to evaluate who is the best universities. There's types of them. What do you think? Do you think what's the accuracy of they can evaluate the best? Who is the best? Who's next? And who is the not that best? Thank you.
Well, we at Harvard never pay any attention to these rankings, unless we're not number one. But so the Shanghai ranking, which is a very, very scientific ranking of certain types of publications, of research publications, actually we come out very well in that. Some of the American ones, focus on other issues. The Times Higher Education one, somehow or other, of London, somehow or other Oxford and Cambridge do remarkably well in this. Anyway, I'm kidding. Basically, you end up with the same groupings of universities over time. But again, times can change. And you'll see a shift now. More American universities used to be in the top 50 than 10 years ago than are today. More Chinese universities are in the top 50 than there were 10 years ago, when there were none. In the 2000, maybe 2 years ago, in the QS ranking, which is one of the other ones, Tsinghua University and Peking University outranked all but two of the American Ivy League universities. Happily, Harvard and Princeton have stayed ahead of the game just by a little bit. But these only, what they tell you where things are moving, where universities are rising or falling, or where systems of higher education are rising or falling. But they are not they don't tell you how students learn. They don't tell you how teachers teach. They don't tell you who has been inspired to do something altogether different because of their education. And so on many basic levels of education, they don't tell you what you really want to know. Do these universities turn out people who become extraordinary citizens? Do they turn out people who become innovators in industry or in science? So just focusing only and largely on the research of faculty, that's an important thing. But it is only one part of universities. But these rankings almost exclusively focus on that. And so I think we have to take them with a grain of salt and not assume, not worry if your university has gone from number 32 to number 35, that somehow the sky is falling. It makes actually no difference. And we again are never worried about it as long as we're number one.
Yes, of course. I think Harvard has been always ranked on top of the list. But also, you see the Chinese university coming up, like Tsinghua, Beida, and Zhejiang University, now getting into top 50. It's getting up. So I think this free exchange education environment globally, and student exchange globally, and faculty exchange globally, to facilitate this global innovation of universities, which is going to be the subject we're going to talk about again in Duke Kunshan University in March, which the NOHA just sent me a message that reminded me the dates on that. So March, we will go there. And so I think this talking about innovation and excellency of the university, both overseas and in China, is always a great subject. And your books actually contribute to this great literature of how to become a best university. I'm sure we'll be very much looking forward to your Chinese edition to be published in China. So once again, thank you, Bill, for taking time to come to CCG and talk to us. And we on behalf of CCG, and also of course we're going to put this online for our online audience, and all going to be very thankful for your great contribution in facilitating China-U.S. education exchanges. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you very much to CCG for hosting this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's finish here. Thank you, all of you.